Dr. Kang Minho stood at the observation deck of the massive evaluation ship, watching the small human vessel approach through the darkness of space. The ship looked simple compared to the advanced technology around him. Its metal hull was plain and its design seemed basic, yet something about it made him curious. "They call their ship Perseverance," said his assistant, Dr. Ryu Hana, reading from her datapad. "The species calls itself human. They come from a planet called Earth." Kang Minho nodded slowly. He had evaluated hundreds of new species for the Galactic Council over the past 20 years. Most followed the same pattern. They were either too primitive to matter or too aggressive to trust. Humans seemed to fit into the first group. The Galactic Council had strict rules about new species. Everyone had to be tested and classified before they could join the galactic community. Category Green meant they were safe but not important. Category Yellow meant they needed watching. Category Red was reserved for the most dangerous species in the galaxy. "Have you read their initial reports?" Kang Minho asked. "Yes, sir. They have basic space travel, simple weapons, and small population. Their technology is about 300 years behind galactic standard. They seem peaceful so far." The human ship docked with a soft thud that echoed through the metal corridors. Kang Minho walked toward the meeting chamber where he would conduct the evaluation. The chamber was designed to make new species feel comfortable. It had adjustable atmosphere, lighting, and gravity. Captain Lee Do-hyun was the first human to step into the chamber. He was tall for his species with dark hair and calm eyes. Behind him came Dr. Park Sora, a woman with quick movements and bright eyes that seemed to notice everything. Colonel Kim Woo-bin followed, walking like a soldier but without the aggressive stance that worried evaluators. "Welcome to the Galactic Council evaluation vessel," Kang Minho said in Galactic Standard, the common language used by all member species. Captain Lee smiled and spoke in heavily accented Galactic Standard. "Thank you for meeting with us. We are honored to be here." The formal evaluation began with basic questions. Kang Minho asked about human technology, society, and intentions. Captain Lee answered honestly about Earth's history, including their wars and conflicts. This was normal. Most species had violent pasts. "We have made mistakes," Captain Lee admitted, "but we have learned from them. We seek knowledge and friendship among the stars." Dr. Park Sora remained quiet during most of the questioning, but Kang Minho noticed her listening carefully to every word. Her eyes moved between the speakers, and she often tilted her head like she was solving a puzzle. After 2 hours, they took a break. Kang Minho expected the humans to rest or ask basic questions about galactic society. Instead, Dr. Park Sora approached him with a request that surprised him. "Dr. Kang, may I ask about your language? Galactic Standard seems to follow patterns I recognize, but there are sounds that do not match any language structure I know." Kang Minho raised his eyebrows. Most new species struggle just to understand Galactic Standard, let alone analyze its structure. "What patterns do you see?" Dr. Park Sora's eyes lit up. "The word order suggests it developed from a species that thinks in three-dimensional space rather than linear time. The verb forms indicate at least 4 different concepts of causality, and the pronouns," she paused, thinking. "The pronouns suggest your ancestors could perceive multiple probability states simultaneously." Kang Minho stared at her. She had just described the Veltharian language roots of Galactic Standard, something that took most galactic linguists years to understand. The Veltharians were the oldest species in the Council, and their language formed the basis of galactic communication. "How did you determine this in just 2 hours?" he asked. "I compared the logical structures to the emotional undertones," she explained simply. "Languages always reflect how their speakers see reality. Your people see connections where minds see sequences." During the remaining evaluation, Dr. Park Sora continued to surprise him. She asked questions about 3 other species' languages that she had overheard in the corridors. By the end of the day, she was speaking basic phrases in 2 of them. Colonel Kim Woo-bin showed similar unexpected depth when discussing military matters. He described human warfare not with pride, but with careful analysis of what worked and what failed. He spoke about strategy, logistics, and the importance of understanding your enemy, but he also talked about the cost of violence and why humans preferred other solutions. "War teaches hard lessons," Kim Woo-bin said, "but the most important lesson is that war should be the last choice, not the first." Captain Lee demonstrated leadership skills that impressed even the Council observers. He listened more than he spoke, asked thoughtful questions, and showed genuine interest in every species they discussed. When conflicts arose between his own team members, he solved them quickly and fairly. The evaluation lasted 3 days. By the end, Kang Minho had filled out the standard classification forms. Humans scored low on technology and military power. They had no special abilities or advanced sciences. Their space travel was primitive and their weapons were simple. But something nagged at him as he wrote his final report. The humans had shown a quality that was harder to measure. They learned quickly, adapted easily, and seemed genuinely interested in understanding others rather than conquering them. Classification recommendation? Asked Dr. Ryuhana as she reviewed his report. Category green, Kang Minho replied after a moment. They are primitive but peaceful. No threat to galactic stability. He submitted the report to the Galactic Council and watched the human ship depart. Captain Lee had accepted humanity's provisional membership with quiet dignity. They would be allowed to establish small colonies and trade with other species under Council supervision. As the human ship disappeared into hyperspace, Kang Minho felt an odd sensation. For the first time in his career, he wondered if he had missed something important. The humans were unlike any species he had evaluated. They were not the strongest or the smartest, but there was something else about them, something that might change everything. But the report was filed, and the decision was made. Humanity was category green, safe, simple, and unimportant. The Galactic Council would learn how wrong that assessment was, but not for several years. By then it would be far too late to change what the humans had set in motion. Dr. Parksora had been right about one thing during her analysis of Galactic Standard. Languages did reflect how their speakers saw reality, and humans, it turned out, saw connections everywhere. 5 years had passed since humans joined the galactic community, and Yun Jiwan was making his 3rd trade deal of the week. He sat across from a massive hegemony trader, whose 4 arms moved in complex patterns as they negotiated. The alien's skin changed colors to show his emotions, currently a worried purple. The humans want to change our production methods again, the trader said through his translator device. This is the 5th improvement you have suggested this year. Yun Jiwan smiled and pulled up a holographic display showing efficiency charts. The changes increased your output by 30% and reduced waste by half. Your profits have doubled. The hegemony trader's skin shifted to a pleased orange color. Yes, but my supervisors worry. No species has ever helped us improve so much. What do humans want in return? Better trade relationships, Yuan answered honestly. When you prosper, we prosper. When you have problems, we help solve them. This benefits everyone. This conversation happened dozens of times across human space. Trade liaison officers like Yun Jiwan worked with 7 different species, building relationships that went beyond simple buying and selling. Humans did not just trade goods. They traded ideas, solutions, and innovations. On the other side of human space, engineer Choi Hyak was having a different kind of success. He stood in a Krillian laboratory, studying their atmospheric processors with the focused attention that made other species nervous. The machines were impressive, capable of changing a planet's air composition in just a few decades. Your people learn very quickly, said Dr. Velkoth, the lead Krillian scientist. His insect-like features made his expressions hard to read, but his tone sounded worried. Perhaps too quickly. Choi Hyok looked up from the processor schematics he had been studying. I notice your designs focus on speed over efficiency. What if we could make them work better and use less energy? Impossible. Velkoth clicked his mandibles in dismissal. These designs have been perfected over centuries. 3 weeks later, Choi Hyok presented his modifications. The improved processors could work twice as fast while using half the energy. More importantly, they could be adjusted to benefit multiple species at once instead of just serving Krillian needs. The breakthrough came on Kepler 442b, a world where both humans and Krillians were establishing colonies. The Krillian atmospheric processors were slowly changing the air to suit their breathing requirements. But this made it harder for humans to survive without breathing equipment. Administrator Shin Boyoung called an emergency meeting when human colonists began having health problems. The obvious solution was to ask the Galactic Council to arbitrate the dispute. Most species would have followed this path, filing formal complaints and waiting months for a decision. Instead, Shin Boyoung invited Dr. Im Sung-ho and his research team to study the problem. Dr. Im was a specialist in what humans called adaptive engineering, finding ways to make technology work for multiple purposes. The Krillian processors are not wrong, Dr. Im explained to the mixed group of human and Krillian colonists. They simply solve only one problem at a time. What if we could make them solve several problems together? Working with Velkoth and his team, Dr. Im redesigned the atmospheric processors to create zones of different air composition across the planet. Humans could breathe easily in their areas. Krillians could thrive in theirs. And there were mixed zones where both species could work together with minimal breathing assistance. Solution impressed the Krillians so much that they invited human engineers to help improve other technology. Within months, human Krillian teams had developed hybrid manufacturing systems, improved space propulsion, and better communication networks. News of the partnership reached the Galactic Council through routine monitoring reports. Council member Zephara of the Orion Collective read the reports with growing concern. She was responsible for tracking new species integration, and the human pattern was unlike anything in Council records. They do not follow standard development protocols, she reported to her supervisors. Most species focus on one or two technologies and gradually improve them over decades. Humans take existing technology from any source and immediately begin modifying it. Her supervisor, an ancient Veltharian named Arch-Counselor Morden, reviewed the files with interest. Are they stealing technology? No, Zephara replied. They ask permission, offer fair trade, and always share their improvements with the original developers. The Krillians are now using human-modified versions of their own inventions. And these modifications work better than the originals? In every case we have studied, yes. But that is not the concerning part. Zephara highlighted several data points on her display. The concerning part is the speed. Humans understand alien technology faster than the species who created it. Meanwhile, on the frontier world of New Geneva, Colony Director Oh Min-woo was solving a problem that had puzzled the Galactic Council for decades. The Centauri Mining Consortium had been struggling with equipment failures in their deep space operations. Their mining robots worked well in normal conditions but failed when dealing with unusual mineral compositions. Oh Min-woo studied the problem for 2 weeks, then proposed a solution that seemed simple, but had escaped Centauri engineers for years. Instead of building robots to handle specific minerals, he suggested creating adaptive robots that could analyze and adjust to any mineral they encountered. Impossible, said Consortium Chief Engineer Zartak. The processing power required would be enormous. Not if you distribute the intelligence, Oh Min-woo explained. Instead of each robot carrying all the processing power, make them share information instantly. When one robot learns something new, all robots learn it immediately. The networked mining system exceeded all expectations. Production increased by 400%. Equipment failures dropped to almost zero, and the robots began discovering new mining techniques that no organic mind had considered. The Centauri Consortium was so impressed that they offered humans exclusive partnership rights for all future mining operations. This was unprecedented. No species had ever been offered such broad access to Centauri technology and resources. Dr. Nam Yejin, working from her office on Earth, cataloged each of these successes in her Cultural Analysis Division reports. Her job was to understand how different species thought and worked, but she had discovered something more important. She was mapping the connections between species and finding ways to solve problems that benefited everyone involved. Humans have an unusual approach to challenges, she wrote in her monthly report to Earth's Colonial Administration. We do not see technology as belonging to one species. We see it as a tool that can be improved to help anyone who needs it. This perspective allows us to find solutions that original developers missed. By the end of the 5th year, humanity had formed formal partnerships with 12 species and informal cooperation agreements with 25 more. Human colonies existed in 18 star systems, and human-designed improvements were being used by species across the galaxy. The Galactic Council began receiving reports that concerned them. Humans were not expanding like a typical species. They were not conquering territory or demanding resources. Instead, they were making themselves useful to everyone they met. Council member Zephara filed her annual assessment with a recommendation that surprised her colleagues. I suggest upgrading humanity's classification to Category Yellow. They show no aggressive tendencies, but their rate of technological and social integration exceeds all previous models. The recommendation was discussed briefly and then dismissed. Humans were clearly primitive and harmless. Their helpfulness was seen as evidence of their low threat level, not a reason for concern. This decision would later be recognized as one of the greatest miscalculations in galactic history. The Council had confused being helpful with being harmless, not realizing that the two were very different things. As the 5th anniversary of First Contact approached, Captain Lee Do-yun, now promoted to Admiral, prepared humanity's first comprehensive report to the Galactic Council. The report detailed human colonies, trade relationships, and technological developments. What the report did not mention was how thoroughly humans had woven themselves into the fabric of galactic civilization. They had become the problem solvers, the innovators, and the bridge builders between species that had never cooperated before. The quiet revolution had begun, and no one had noticed. 15 years after First Contact, Ambassador Jiang Subian walked through the corridors of the Galactic Council headquarters, feeling like she carried the weight of 2 galaxies on her shoulders. Today's meeting would determine humanity's future, though most council members did not realize how much their own futures depended on the decision. "The numbers are remarkable," she said to her aide, Deputy Ambassador Cho Min-hyuk, as they reviewed the latest reports. "Human communities now exist in 47 star systems. We have active partnerships with 37 different species." Cho Min-hyuk nodded, but his expression was worried. "The Council is starting to ask uncomfortable questions. Director Veltos has been investigating our expansion patterns." Jiang Subin understood his concern. When humans first joined the galactic community, they had been seen as a minor species that might establish a few small colonies. No one expected them to become central to galactic commerce and technology within 15 years. On the industrial world of Proxima Centauri C, factory supervisor Oh Min-woo was having the kind of day that made galactic intelligence nervous. He stood in the main control room of the largest manufacturing facility in the sector, watching production numbers that should have been impossible. "Show me the efficiency reports again," he said to his assistant, Engineer Park Ji-hoon. "Output is up 400% from last year," Park Ji-hoon reported. "Energy consumption is down 60%. Waste production has dropped to almost zero." Oh Min-woo nodded with satisfaction. The improvements had taken 6 months to implement, working closely with hegemony engineers who understood their equipment better than anyone. But humans had seen possibilities that hegemony minds missed. The key was realizing that the assembly lines were fighting each other instead of working together. Oh Min-woo explained to a group of visiting hegemony officials. Each line tried to maximize its own output without considering how that affected other lines. "We created a coordination system that lets all lines work as a single unit." The visiting officials changed colors rapidly as they processed this information. Their skin patterns showed amazement mixed with concern. One of them, Chief Administrator Kaltos, spoke carefully. "Your improvements exceed our best engineering projections. How did you identify problems that our best minds missed?" Oh Min-woo considered the question seriously. "We looked at the factory as a living system, instead of a collection of separate machines. In nature, the most efficient systems are those where every part helps every other part." This conversation was happening across human space. On research stations, mining operations, agricultural worlds, and trading posts, humans were not just participating in galactic civilization, they were improving it in ways that surprised everyone, including themselves. Dr. Nam Yejin had spent the past 5 years documenting these improvements from her office on Earth. Her cultural analysis division had grown from a small research team to a major department that studied every species humanity encountered. But her real job was something much more important and much more secret. "We need to understand not just how other species think, but what they need," she explained to her newest team member, Dr. Hong Seung-ki. "Every species has problems they cannot solve alone. Our job is to find those problems and figure out how to help." Dr. Hong Seung-ki looked through the files on his desk with growing amazement. "These reports show us solving problems for species across the galaxy. Food distribution for the androids, communication systems for the silicate collective, even artistic techniques for the ethereal chorus. The pattern is always the same," Dr. Nam Yejin said. "We study how they do things, understand what limits them, then find ways to remove those limits. usually by combining their techniques with knowledge from other species. This approach had created something unprecedented in galactic history, a web of interconnected relationships with humanity at the center. Humans did not control these relationships, they facilitated them. Species that had never cooperated before were now working together on projects that benefited everyone. The scope of this network worried Galactic Intelligence Director Felthos more than any military threat he had ever studied. He stood in his office reviewing charts that showed trade routes, technology transfers, and political alliances. 40% of all galactic commerce now flowed through human-influenced systems. They are not conquering, he reported to the emergency council session. They are not threatening. They are becoming essential. This may be more dangerous than conquest. His assistant, intelligence analyst Morketh, had spent months studying human behavior patterns. Their expansion follows no known model. Traditional species expand by claiming territory and resources. Humans expand by making themselves useful. Explain, demanded Archon Veltar, the ancient leader of the Galactic Council. When humans establish a colony, they immediately begin studying local conditions and problems, Morketh said. They do not just extract resources or establish military positions. They find ways to help local species solve problems they could not solve alone. And this creates political bonds. Stronger than political bonds, Velthos interjected. Economic dependency. The species that work with humans become more prosperous and more capable. Removing human influence would harm them significantly. Meanwhile, on the frontier world of Kepler 438b, Dr. Ko Hyunjin was demonstrating exactly what worried the Galactic Council. She stood before a mixed audience of humans, Krillians, hegemony traders, and silicate engineers, explaining her latest breakthrough. Energy distribution has always been a problem for multi-species operations, she said, gesturing to a holographic display. Each species uses different power systems that are not compatible. Until now, the display showed a new type of energy converter that could take power from any source and distribute it in any format needed. Krillian bioelectrical systems could power hegemony mechanical equipment. Silicate crystal matrices could run human computers. Everything could work together. How is this possible? Asked the silicate representative, its crystal body ringing with harmonic confusion. We studied how each species generates and uses energy, then found the mathematical relationships between all the different systems, Dr. Ko Hyunjin explained. Once you understand the connections, creating converters becomes an engineering problem instead of a theoretical impossibility. The audience was silent for a moment, then erupted in excited discussions as representatives realized what this technology meant for their own operations. Dr. Ko Hyunjin watched with satisfaction as species that had struggled to work together began planning joint projects. This scene was repeated across human space as breakthrough followed. Breakthrough. Dr. Bai Qian developed translation systems that worked for species without vocal cords. Engineer Lim Donghyun created manufacturing techniques that combined the best methods from 6 different species. Researcher An Jiung solved agricultural problems by mixing farming techniques from worlds with completely different climates. Each solution created new opportunities for cooperation, and each cooperation created new problems to solve. Humans found themselves at the center of an expanding network of species working together on projects that none could accomplish alone. Admiral Lee Do-hyun, now commanding the Earth Defense Fleet, received daily reports about these developments with mixed feelings. The rapid expansion of human influence was everything humanity had hoped for when they first ventured into space. But he worried about the reaction from the Galactic Council. We are becoming too important too quickly, he confided to his chief of staff, Colonel Yu Sung-jin. The Council classifies species based on military threat levels. They do not have categories for species that become essential to galactic infrastructure. Colonel Yu Sung-jin reviewed the intelligence reports from Council space. Our contacts report increased surveillance of human operations. Council intelligence is asking questions about our expansion methods. Are we doing anything wrong? No, sir. We ask permission before establishing colonies. We follow all Council regulations and we share our technological improvements freely. But we are growing faster than any species in Council history. Admiral Lee Do-hyun looked out at the stars through his office window. 15 years ago, humanity had been alone on one small planet. Now they were partners with dozens of species across the galaxy, and their influence was growing exponentially. The success was everything they had dreamed of, but dreams sometimes became nightmares when they came true too completely. At the Galactic Council headquarters, the Emergency Classification Committee convened for the third time in 6 months. The subject was always the same: what to do about humanity. Their expansion continues to accelerate, reported Council member Zafara. They now have significant influence in 60% of galactic trade networks. More concerning, they have created interdependencies that did not exist before. Explain these interdependencies, demanded Archon Veltar. Species that work with humans become dependent on human innovations. Their economies become more efficient, their technologies improve, and their problems get solved. But this means they need continued human cooperation to maintain these improvements. The implications hung in the air like a dangerous gas. For the first time in galactic history, a species had created a situation where removing them would. 25 years after first contact, Research Director Song Minjae stood before the Emergency Classification Committee with a report that would change galactic politics forever. The massive chamber of the Galactic Council fell silent as she activated the holographic display, showing the scope of human influence across known space. The data is clear, she began, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. Humanity has become the most influential species in galactic history without engaging in a single act of aggression. Archon Veltar leaned forward in his ancient seat, his crystalline features reflecting the light from the display. Define influential, Director Song. Song Minjae touched her control pad, and the display showed a three-dimensional map of galactic civilization. Blue lines connected human colonies to other species' worlds, creating a web that stretched across every sector. 73% of current galactic trade routes now depend on human-developed or human-improved technology, she reported. 85% of the galaxy's most productive manufacturing facilities use human optimization techniques. 92% of successful interspecies cooperation projects have human involvement. The numbers hung in the air like accusations. Council member Zafara, who had been tracking human expansion for years, felt vindicated and terrified at the same time. How did we miss this pattern? Demanded Intelligence Director Velthos. Song Minjae had anticipated this question. Because humans do not expand like other species. They do not conquer territory or demand tribute. They integrate. They become necessary. On the human research station orbiting Proxima Centauri, Dr. Ko Hyunjin was working on her most ambitious project yet. The unified field theory had taken 3 years to develop, combining scientific principles from 12 different species into a single mathematical framework. Show me the energy calculations again, she said to her research partner. Dr. Jeon Seungwon. Dr. Jeon Seungwon pulled up the equations that had baffled galactic scientists for centuries. The Veltharian quantum mechanics, Krillian bioenergy principles, and hegemony mechanical engineering all describe the same underlying forces, just from different perspectives. Exactly, Dr. Ko Hyunjin said with excitement. Each species developed science based on how they perceive reality. Veltharians think in probability waves, so their physics focuses on quantum uncertainty. Krillians live in biological harmony, so they see energy as life force. Hegemony are builders, so they understand mechanical relationships. And humans? Humans see connections. We do not just understand each perspective. We see how they fit together into a larger truth. The unified field theory was more than an academic achievement. It solved practical energy problems that had limited galactic development for millennia. Planets with incompatible power systems could now share energy freely. Space stations could tap into multiple energy sources simultaneously. Entire sectors that had been considered uninhabitable became viable for colonization. Dr. Ko Hyunjin prepared to present her findings to the Galactic Scientific Council, unaware that her breakthrough would be the final piece of evidence that convinced the Council to reclassify humanity. Back in the Council chambers, Song Minjae continued her presentation with growing urgency. The unified field theory represents something we have never seen before, she explained. Not just innovation, but synthesis. Humans do not just learn from other species. They combine knowledge in ways that create entirely new possibilities. She highlighted examples across every field of galactic science. Human doctors had combined healing techniques from 7 species to create medical treatments that worked better than anything developed by individual species. Human engineers had merged construction methods from different worlds to build structures that could survive in previously impossible environments. Each breakthrough creates new dependencies. Song Minjae continued. Species that adopt human innovations find their capabilities enhanced beyond their previous limits, but they also become reliant on continued human cooperation to maintain these advantages. The pattern was clear and terrifying. Humans did not just help other species solve problems. They created new ways of thinking about problems that made the old solutions obsolete. Council member Torvanth of the Rigel Confederation raised a concern that echoed through the chamber. Are you suggesting that humans are deliberately creating dependencies to control other species? No, Song Minjae replied immediately. All evidence indicates that humans genuinely want to help others succeed. Their cooperation is authentic. This makes them more dangerous, not less. Explain. Species can defend against conquest or resist exploitation, but how do you defend against someone who makes your life better? How do you resist improvements that benefit everyone involved? The question hung in the air as council members contemplated its implications. Traditional threats could be met with traditional responses, but humanity posed a challenge that the Galactic Council had never faced before. Dr. An Misu, representing Earth at the Scientific Council, presented the unified field theory to an audience of the galaxy's greatest minds. The presentation lasted 4 hours and left most attendees speechless. The mathematical proofs are beyond question, announced Chief Scientist Velkaran after reviewing the data. This theory accurately predicts energy behavior across all known physical conditions. It will revolutionize technology for every member species. Dr. An Misu nodded respectfully. We offer this research freely to all council members, as we have with all our previous discoveries. This generosity, which had characterized human behavior for 25 years, now took on a more ominous meaning for those who understood its implications. Humans were not just sharing knowledge, they were reshaping the foundation of galactic science. How long did this research take? Asked Dr. Velkaran. 3 years working with data and theories from 12 species, Dr. An Misu replied. Our scientists were able to identify connections that had not been noticed before. What she did not mention was that the research had been guided by the Cultural Analysis Division's deep understanding of how different species thought. Humans had not just combined scientific theories, they had learned to think like 12 different species simultaneously. Back in the council chambers, the debate reached its climax as Archon Veltar called for the final classification vote. The evidence shows that humanity represents an unprecedented form of expansion, he announced. They do not conquer worlds, but they fundamentally alter galactic civilization. The question before us is whether this alteration constitutes a threat worthy of Category Red classification. Intelligence Director Velthos presented the final analysis. Traditional threat assessment focuses on a species' capacity for destruction, but humanity demonstrates a different kind of danger, the capacity for irreversible change. If humanity disappeared tomorrow, he continued, dozens of species would face economic collapse, technological regression, and the loss of capabilities they have come to depend upon. This level of dependency is itself a form of control, whether intended or not. The vote was closer than expected, but the outcome was inevitable. For the first time in galactic history, a species would be reclassified from Category Green directly to Category Red, skipping Category Yellow entirely. The decision was unanimous in the end, though it came with heavy hearts. Council members understood that they were not just reclassifying a species, they were acknowledging that galactic civilization had already been fundamentally changed by human influence. Song Minjae filed her final report, with a conclusion that captured the essence of humanity's impact. Humans are evolutionary catalysts. In contact with any system, biological, technological, or social, they accelerate positive adaptation while building permanent beneficial relationships. This makes them simultaneously the most valuable and most dangerous species we have encountered. The Category Red classification would officially designate humanity as an existential threat to galactic stability. But the irony was not lost on anyone involved in the decision. Humanity had earned this classification not through violence or aggression, but through 25 years of genuine helpfulness, innovation, and cooperation, they had become dangerous by making everyone else better. As news of the reclassification spread through classified channels, Admiral Lee Doyon received an encrypted message from Earth Command. The message was simple but carried the weight of 2.5 decades of peaceful expansion. Category Red confirmed. Prepare for consequences. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you classified your most helpful neighbors as your greatest threat. And humanity was about to discover whether being indispensable was the same thing as being safe. 30 years after first contact, President Park Jin-woo stood before the United Earth Assembly in a chamber that had never been designed for such a grave announcement. The holographic displays around him showed star maps marking human colonies across the galaxy, each one now carrying the weight of an unprecedented classification. Citizens of Earth and her colonies, he began, his voice carrying across light years to every human settlement. Yesterday, the Galactic Council officially designated humanity as Category Red, the highest threat classification in galactic history. A murmur ran through the assembly. Category Red was reserved for species capable of destroying entire star systems, for civilizations that posed existential threats to galactic peace. The irony was not lost on anyone present. We have been classified as dangerous, President Park continued, not because we threaten to destroy, but because we have succeeded too well at building and improving. In the Galactic Council chambers, the aftermath of the reclassification decision created chaos that no one had anticipated. Species that had worked with humans for decades were demanding explanations. Trade partners were threatening to withdraw from council agreements. Military alliances were fracturing as species chose sides. Fleet Admiral Seo Tae-hyun, humanity's highest-ranking military officer, reviewed the defensive preparations that felt both necessary and absurd. Earth's orbital defenses had been upgraded, colonial militias had been activated, and the human fleet was positioned to protect key systems, but the real defense had nothing to do with weapons. Admiral, we are receiving communications from 53 different species, reported his aide, Commander Nam Tae-won, all expressing support for humanity and opposition to any council action against us. Admiral Seo reviewed the list with amazement. The Krillians had announced that any attack on human colonies would be considered an attack on their own worlds. The hegemony had declared that their manufacturing agreements with humanity were non-negotiable. Even smaller species that had limited contact with humans were voicing support. They are not just supporting us politically, Commander Nam continued. The Centauri Mining Consortium has offered to provide raw materials for our defense. The Andromedan Medical Alliance is prepared to share their most advanced healing technology. The Silicate Collective has volunteered their crystal matrices for our computer systems. The offers of support kept arriving faster than anyone could process them. Species across the galaxy were making it clear that they considered humanity essential to their continued prosperity and development. Dr. An Mi-soo, now serving as Earth's chief scientific advisor, had spent the past week analyzing the galactic response to humanity's reclassification. Her findings were both encouraging and terrifying. We have created something that has never existed before, she reported to the Emergency Council meeting, a voluntary dependency network spanning most of galactic civilization. She activated a holographic display showing the connections between human communities and alien civilizations. The web of relationships had grown so complex that removing humanity would collapse trade routes, halt technological development, and leave dozens of species unable to maintain their current capabilities. The Council classified us as Category Red because they realized we had become irreplaceable, Dr. An continued. But they failed to consider that irreplaceable and removable are not the same thing. On the frontier world of New Geneva, Captain Kim Da-hyun was experiencing the strange reality of commanding a defense fleet that included ships from 12 different species. The alien vessels had arrived without invitation, their captains simply announcing that they were there to protect their human partners. This is unprecedented in galactic history, reported her tactical officer, Lieutenant Cho Min-suk. We have Krillian bioships, hegemony battlecruisers, and silicate crystal arrays all operating under human command authority. Captain Kim found herself in command of the most diverse military force ever assembled, united not by conquest or treaty, but by mutual benefit and genuine friendship. The alien crews worked alongside humans with an efficiency that impressed everyone involved. "Why are they willing to risk war with the Galactic Council for us?" she asked her Krillian liaison, Commander Velmoth. "Because you have made us better than we were before," Velmoth replied through his translator. "A galaxy without humans would be a galaxy where we return to old limitations and problems we thought were solved forever." Back on Earth, Dr. Kang Minho sat in his office reviewing the original evaluation reports he had filed 30 years earlier. The elderly xenobiologist had been invited to Earth as an observer, and he spent his days trying to understand how he had been so completely wrong about humanity's potential. "I classified them as primitive and harmless," he said to Dr. Ryu Hana, his former assistant who now served as Earth's liaison to the galactic scientific community. "How did I miss what they really were?" Dr. Ryu Hana, who had spent 3 decades working with human scientists, had developed her own theory. "You were not wrong about what they were. You were wrong about what they could become. Humans do not just adapt to existing systems. They evolve those systems into something entirely new." She showed him data from the latest scientific collaborations. Human researchers were not just learning alien sciences, they were creating hybrid disciplines that combined the best insights from multiple species. Biology that incorporated mechanical engineering principles, physics that included biological energy concepts, mathematics that worked with both logical and intuitive reasoning methods. "They are turning science itself into a cooperative enterprise," she explained. "Each species contributes their perspective, and humans find ways to combine all perspectives into new understanding." As news of the galactic situation reached human colonies, a strange calm settled over humanity's scattered settlements. There was concern, certainly, but also a quiet confidence that came from 30 years of successful cooperation. Ambassador Jiang Subin, now humanity's senior diplomatic representative, received a message that captured the mood perfectly. It came from the human colony on Kepler 442b, the world where the first human-alien cooperation had proven successful. "We stand ready to defend ourselves if necessary," the message read, "but we believe our friends will not let it come to that." The belief proved justified. Within days of humanity's reclassification, the Galactic Council found itself facing a crisis that threatened to tear apart the political structure that had maintained peace for millennia. 47 species formally protested the Category Red designation. 23 species threatened to withdraw from Council membership if action was taken against humanity. 15 species declared that they would consider any attack on human settlements as an act of war against themselves. Most shocking of all, 12 species that had never worked with humans directly announced their support, stating that humanity's positive influence on galactic civilization was too valuable to risk. Intelligence Director Velthos found himself in the unprecedented position of recommending against action, despite the threat classification his own department had supported. Military action against humanity would likely trigger the largest conflict in galactic history, he reported to an emergency council session. More importantly, it would be a war fought to destroy the species that most council members consider essential to their continued prosperity. Archon Veltar faced a decision that would define his legacy and possibly determine the future of galactic civilization. The ancient Veltharian had presided over the council for centuries, but he had never confronted a situation where doing the right thing, according to council law, would clearly cause more harm than good. "The Category Red classification stands," he announced, after days of deliberation. "But no action will be taken against humanity unless they demonstrate actual aggressive intent." The decision satisfied no one completely, but prevented the galactic war that everyone feared. Humanity would remain classified as the galaxy's greatest threat, but they would also remain the galaxy's most valued partners. Dr. Kang Minho filed his final report on humanity with a conclusion that would be studied by xenobiologists for generations. Humanity represents an evolutionary step forward for galactic civilization itself. They are not just another species joining the galactic community. They are an upgrade to how that community functions. In his personal notes, which would not be discovered until after his death, he wrote, "Category Red was accurate, but not in the way we intended. Humanity has become the danger level because they have made themselves the foundation upon which galactic civilization now rests. remove the foundation, and everything collapses. President Park Jin-woo's final address to the Earth Assembly captured the strange victory that humanity had achieved. We sought friendship among the stars and found it. We offered help to those who needed it and discovered that help freely given creates bonds stronger than any chain. We have been declared the galaxy's greatest threat precisely because we have become its greatest asset. 30 years after Dr. Kang Minho had classified them as Category Green, primitive but harmless, humanity had achieved something unprecedented in galactic history. They had become simultaneously the most feared and most beloved species in known space. The galaxy would never be the same, and everyone involved,